Hello guys, how are you doing? This is Henry here, back with another video, back with an entrepreneurial success story. And you might be wondering, how come today we're doing this interview? It looks like you're on Zoom. Yes, I'm actually on Zoom, and the reason why is because, the person we're actually having an interview with today, does not stay in the country, but we wanted to get this going because, obviously because of the lockdown, I couldn't get out there to Windhoek, Namibia, but we just decided that, what, this is a critical time, and we believe that, what he has to share is very critical for this time, and, just to, for us to inspire and help each other, because you guys know that my passion on this channel is to inspire you to reach your personal and career goals. So with that in mind, and you guys know one of the ways we do it is that we actually do entrepreneurial success stories and interview people who have managed to climb up that ladder of success, whether by establishing their own enterprises or establishing successful careers and going to the top of their career. So that's what we do. So if you're new to this channel, a very warm welcome to you. Kindly hit that subscribe button and let us grow together. And if you are back here again, man, thank you for the support. We are now on 110 plus subscribers and we are growing. So guys, hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, and let's grow together because I've got a lot more to share with you, and we're gonna have a great time. So without any further ado, so as I said, guys, today, we've got the privilege, and I've got the privilege to actually be interviewing Mr. Erwin Tjipuka, CEO of FNB Namibia. Thank you very much, sir, for taking your time, just to come through, onto this channel and, just share your story with us. Thank you very much for that. Yes.
No, thank you, Henry. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, man. I mean, we're gonna have a good time, man. It's all out, is all the way in Windhoek, man. Just wish that we could fly out there, but since the borders are closed, I think we are sure that we are going to pick this up, in a more physical interview one of these days. So Mr. Erwin, you are the CEO of FNB Namibia, and this is one of the biggest banks here in Africa. Stretching all across Africa. It's been around for a very long time, and you are at the helm there in Namibia. So can you be so kind as to just tell us, how did you get there? And we also know that, you're a father, you're a husband. How are you, juggling all these things? But first of all, how did you get there, sir? What is your story?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Henry, for the opportunity to share my story. So I actually come from, I was born and bred in a small town in the northern part of Namibia, in the township of Nomso. Brought up by my grandmother, because you remember back in the days, my mother had to go back to work, but my grandmother was more flexible, so she actually raised me. And that's really where I grew up, and obviously growing up in difficult times, as you know, it was pre-independence Namibia, and I think generally our parents never had the opportunities that we have today or that our children have today. So it was quite difficult time for us to really survive and so on. But I think the thing for me was when I saw the circumstances that we obviously grew up to, and what I saw in the society that I grew up to, and the fact that we always were denied of opportunities in the time. I said, but I actually said to myself that I have to be something different. At a very young age, I decided that I have to go beyond what people in my society thought was possible at the time. So at the time, I said to myself that I would never allow my circumstances or background to really dictate sort of what I would become in life. So at that point is really when I worked very hard. My grandmother told me that this education, it will be your success to your future. So therefore I worked hard in school, and at a young age I decided I was very good with mathematics. I decided that I wanted to actually become a chartered accountant. At the time there were no, at least at the time I didn't know any black chartered accountant, and I guess at the time people thought, wow, what is this career in fact? And then first of all, and secondly is that we don't know anybody who has actually studied this career. But I guess for me that is the thing. I like to actually do things that nobody has done before.
Okay.
I like to break those barriers. And so I said to myself, then if there are no black chartered accountants, I would be the first one then. Obviously, other people got there before me, but that was sort of what motivated me. So I went to go study. I finished high school, and I was fortunate, obviously, to get a bursary at the time. But even that, the fact that I got a bursary didn't just come like that. I remember I applied for about 13 companies, 13 different bursaries, and 12 of that rejected me. The
Wow.
13th, the last one is actually when I got it. And you know what I said to myself, because I knew that my parents would never be able to afford to take me to university, based on the income that they were earning at the time. So I knew that I needed to have a bursary to be able to actually go to university. So eventually I got that. It was not just because I sat back and waited for it to come. Despite the fact that I think I did very well in school, I still had to go and knock at every single door. I remember being chased out of offices, to say, we don't have bursaries here, we don't grant bursaries and so on. Eventually I got the bursary and I went on to do my bachelor's at the University of Namibia. I started doing articles at Deloitte, but even getting at Deloitte was not that easy. I went for the first interview, they never came back to me. I then keep on calling them,
Wow.
and until eventually they actually granted me a second interview, and then eventually they hired me. So the point I'm trying to make is I think it is one of those things in life is fine to dream and to want to become something or to achieve something in life, but it also requires you sometimes to be persistent, to continue knocking until you actually get what you want in life. And that's really who I am, and that's really what brought me up to here. So I finally got into Deloitte, and as you can remember.
So sir,
Yeah,
before you tell us what happened at Deloitte. So you are saying that you applied for a bursary 13 times, and 12 out of those 13 times you were actually rejected. Wow, man. What was going through your mind at that time? What kept you going? Despite these rejections.
Yeah. So I often tell people that I got used to, when you open this, back in the days people used to write letters. So so you open the envelope and then you see this letter, and they normally start with thank you and very much for your application. However, that word, however, so I must say I don't like that word, So, but I think it is this thing of really saying that you can either just give up, but you also know what the consequence of giving up is. So, or you can continue trying, because there's nothing to lose by trying.
Yes.
So by putting in a few more applications and looking at a few doors, I don't think I lost anything. But in fact, to the contrary, I actually eventually got a bursary. And I think that's really what it is that you must continue to push in life, because often by pushing there's nothing that you lose, but by not pushing there's actually much at stake.
Wow.
And that's really
yeah. So who did you look up to? Because you say that obviously at your grandmother's place, it seems as if you were saying that it was quite like a difficult circumstance, and I would imagine you're also saying that there were no role models, no one had studied accounting before, because we understand you're a chartered accountant by profession. But so who did you actually look up to? Who was there?
Yeah, so obviously, so I think just generally, I think one of my uncle was a teacher, and he was typically a role model at the time. Maybe being a teacher was quite an honor at the time. So I think he actually obviously was part of that motivation. But I think eventually the other thing is also, I think I was sort of obviously doing a lot of reading, etc., about careers and so on and so on. So I think through that, obviously, I also got motivated, etc. And I eventually, when I got to university, one of one of my mentors actually was the first sort of African black person to actually pass the board exam to become a CA. And he happened to actually work for Deloitte. So when I joined Deloitte, obviously we got to know each other, and he also has got a story, an inspiring story, and therefore he became my role model at the time. So yeah.
Wow, because why I ask, and this is something I've spoken to some of my friends about as well. Is just in terms of the issue of having role models. Well, sometimes if you coming, and I noticed this, when choosing careers, especially going into varsity, and sometimes because maybe it was some of us, most of us in let's say an African context, let me just say that maybe we are actually the first ones to go to university in our family. So we don't even have, that person, who can actually see that, so most of our parents didn't go to university, but it's only us who then started our generations. So we didn't have that sort of, those sort of examples, as opposed to maybe other, someone else who might know their uncle is already a lawyer, their uncle is already a chartered accountant. But what you are saying is that, what helped you out of that is reading. Do you have any more thoughts about that? Reading and finding at least someone else. But even as you're saying that, even if your uncle was there who was a teacher, but he wasn't at that level of being, a chartered accountant per se, or some other similar.
So I think, so obviously you either, some people are privileged to have those role models, especially in your specific career that you choose to pursue. Others don't have those. But I guess, and that is why to me it was about, really realizing at that early age that I was actually born for something great, and therefore I need to find out what that greatness means, what that career is that I need to pursue. So therefore, even though I didn't necessarily have the role models, I did a lot of sort of reading. I went to the library quite often already when I was in primary school, just to try and understand the different careers that are out there, and so on. And as I said, I certainly didn't want to become a teacher or a nurse or a typical profession that you saw in society at the time. So therefore, I because obviously I liked mathematics, I enjoyed mathematics. So when I came, when I found about this career that involves the numbers, so it immediately sort of interested me. And so when I started reading more and more and more, initially I just knew that there was, this career called accountant. And as I read more, I realized, there is actually an advanced stage of this career, which is called chartered accountant. And again, as I said, I've always believed in aiming for the top, aiming for the best. And that's why should I just just pursue being an accountant? Let me go all the way and become a chartered accountant. So, and obviously, as you then now, once you decide you want to follow a specific career, you obviously now start reading up about the specific people that have actually made it in those careers, etc., until you eventually have the opportunity to meet those people who have actually pursue this career. The other thing that I also did was when I was in high school, I also spent a lot of time at the Institute of Chartered Accountant. I used to go there, and they give me brochures, and then sometimes the administrator who was at the office there would send me to different people, different firms for more information. So, and I think that is really how I eventually really got the sort of the interest and then also the passion and say, look, I've got to become this thing. So, and I will go all the way, despite the obstacles, despite the fact that at the time I didn't know where I would get money from to go study. I just said to myself, you know what, I need to, this for because one thing to, as I said, I've always believed that I'm a barrier breaker. Being a barrier breaker, I start with a mindset.
Yeah.
It is when you decide that, I'm limitless, I actually can do what people regard as being impossible. And mind you, I think when I was in the 12, I was told by the accounting teacher at the time that I would never pass accounting, so therefore I would never become an accountant.
That's
and you know what?
ridiculous.
And,
Wow.
and that's the thing. When when people are telling me that it's impossible, it almost like it just gives me extra energy and motivation to actually, I'll prove you wrong. You know what I mean? I'll prove
Amazing.
myself that I can do it, and I'll also prove you wrong. And here I am today, and I'm a chartered accountant. So, and despite the fact that I didn't have the funds, as I said, I applied 13 times to actually be able to get a bursary. Eventually, I got the bursary, and I'm grateful for that. And then I went to Deloitte, and again, at the time, it was, being the first going to university, having graduated from university, from my family, and obviously going in our profession, when you go do articles, you actually, it is still part of your studies. So you actually just get pocket money, so to say. So I think one had the choice to say, now I've got a degree. I could actually go out there in commerce and industry and get a fairly good salary. Or I can go and do articles to become a chartered accountant. So obviously the choice was, if you go and work in commerce and interest at the time, you probably get sometimes even double the salary, or you can go and do articles, which is, in my case, is, as I say, I want to become a chartered accountant. Therefore, the temporary sort of gain that you gain by actually gaining a better salary wasn't for me worth it, despite the fact there were pressure, because now your family is expecting you to contribute, to help out there, etc., etc., etc. Therefore, you wanted to go get more money. But I said to myself, you know what? I need to make the sacrifice and invest in my career, my education, which I did. And I think the lesson that I've learned through that, there's a quote that I always quote from John Maxwell, say that in life, there's always a price to pay.
Yeah.
So you either pay the price now and have it comfortable or enjoy your life later, or you can have it comfortable today, but at some point you might have to pay the price.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like the fact that I could have gone and get a better salary, but that would have been temporary, and then at some point you realize, what, other people are actually advancing in their career, they've invested in their career, etc., etc. So I think that sacrifice that I've made to actually go and do article and become a CA has actually helped me and propelled me to be where I am today. As I said, before you become a CA or write or city or honors degree, because I couldn't then afford now to go to university again. You could only do CTA in South Africa. So I then started working, trying to work or study part-time through UNISA. And that was a complete disaster. I failed twice. And I think, after the second time that I failed, I said to myself, what, is this really worth it? And I was actually at the point of about to give up, when the Deloitte at the time, the firm called me in, or the leadership called me in and said, what, I think we believe that you've got potential, we want to invest in you, and therefore we're giving you a bursary and to go study, your honors full time. So I ended up at UCT. So again, having failed twice, most people would probably just give up there. But I keep on, trying, because I really believe that this is, I was meant for this. I was going to make it, and although it wasn't easy, I eventually made it. I went to UCT. I got my CTA or honors, and then I became a chartered accountant. So that is really, and then obviously thereafter things started happening for me. But even thereafter, after I've qualified as a CA, remember it was shortly, so shortly after Namibia got its independence, etc. And at the time, Namibia needed skills, especially specialized skills, that the CA skills was quite in high demand. And especially for, as I said, we were few black chartered accountants at the time. So obviously, our skills were quite in demand. So therefore, at that time, people were offering you, executive positions, in different parastatals, etc. And I had those opportunities, and I said to myself, and that's the thing that one needs to always understand, is that I think, there is this thing called experience that you can't buy.
Yeah.
You can only gain experience when you are actually doing.
Wow. So you were being offered. You were being
yeah.
offered roles to go to be an executive in parastatals, but
Yes.
you yourself, you knew that you didn't have the capacity as yet because of the experience.
Yeah. You see, that's the thing. There are some young people make that mistake by chasing titles, and so on. But then they don't spend time. I always tell people that if you want to climb the corporate ladder, the so-called corporate ladder, is the key to climbing that ladder and getting to the top is making sure that every level of the ladder you're in, that you actually master that level and make sure that you form a solid foundation at that level where you are. Because that is that foundation at that level that actually enable you to go to the next level. But by trying to jump the corporate ladder, it's often people jump steps. And as a result, they get into a point on the ladder where they are now not able to, because they don't have the strong foundation. And sometimes people tend to, fall off the ladder.
Wow.
So I think it's important that one, make sure that you actually your foundation is actually solid at every level of this ladder. So for me, at the time, I felt like I didn't really have enough. I might have the technical knowledge because that is really what my university degrees, or the degrees that I've gained, have given me that technical knowledge, and then obviously also doing articles has given me that technical knowledge. But I didn't have the necessary managerial skills and leadership skills that is required to actually operate at an executive level. And therefore, I stayed on at the firm. And obviously, at the time, I wanted to become a partner as well. So I must say that the time that I spent there was not time wasted. It was really, one of my best times in my career. I grew as a person. And at the right time when I really felt like now I've grown, it's when I left the firm and went to FNB, where eventually I became the chief financial officer at the time.
At FNB. Yeah. So before
FNB.
that, I just wanted to ask you something. So what do you think led the top management at Deloitte to say, because I know, CTA is quite a difficult thing. A lot of people, my sister is a chartered accountant as well, and my brother-in-law. And I know, even from their friends, this issue of, I think there are 4 subjects, is it 4 courses that you have to pass at the same time? You can't drop one, otherwise you can pass 3 and fail 1, you can't pass. That's it. So I know it's quite difficult. But what do you think? What attributes do they think they saw in you that said, Erwin, we're going to give you a scholarship, and you can go to UCT and you can study and you can come back when you are qualified.
Yeah. So I think, remember also, or the thing that I didn't mention was that was the first bursaries, or the bursary that was allocated by the local Deloitte firm. So it was a risk that the firm took to actually award me that bursary at the time. And that's why I think when I went to UCT, I said to myself, you know what, if I fail and go back here, I could actually close door for other people that will come after me. So so I guess that was also one of the motivation. Yeah, so I think they took that risk. And I think, when I reflect on this thing, I think it was really because, I've always given my very best in whatever I do. So therefore, I think, I work hard. I always make sure that what I deliver is of good quality. So I don't cut corners, but I make sure that I really do what I do and do it to the best of my ability. And I think at some point, people will notice, when I always tell people that, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all the time. So and I think the firm noticed that I was hardworking and the quality of my work, and therefore there was potential in me, and therefore they were prepared to actually take a risk and invest in me. And I think that's really what helped me.
Wow.
Especially because when I joined, I joined with other people that were already, they had their CTAs. And now you are being evaluated and you are sort of at the, the same levels of people, who actually had a CTA, they had that advantage. So for me, I thought, then therefore I just have to work a bit extra because to make up for what I didn't have. And I think that really worked very well for me, and it made me, and it obviously they noticed that, and then I got the best, and here I am today.
Wow, no, that's amazing. So you say that you then went to, after you felt that, what, I do now have, that capacity and that managerial experience. That's when you now took up a role as a chief financial officer at FNB.
Yeah.
And obviously within that time, as chief financial officer, because what I like about your story really is that you've only really worked for 2 institutions. It shows something, with regards to, I think, loyalty, just direction and stability. That's what I think personally. When that happens, it just shows there's some sort of, some sort of grounding that you're like, what? Just take us through that. How do you identify to say, what, this is a good place to work at. This is where I want to, invest my time. How do you do that?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's some motivation.
So I think it is so loyalty is one aspect, but I always thought that loyalty can only be there if you work for an organization that also recognize obviously your contribution. So therefore, the most important thing is, and I tell people that when I joined and started my article at the time, I had the opportunity to go to the other firms as well. I was offered employment opportunity at 2 of the other big 4 firms. But I kept on going back to Deloitte until I eventually got in. And that's because there was something about Deloitte that I liked, the culture, so by sort of reading and doing research, I got attracted to Deloitte and the Deloitte brand and so on. So I think what's important is to make sure that you work for an organization. I always make this, what I tell people always is to say, there's a book that I discovered recently called The Purpose Effect. And that and the author talks about that there's sort of 3 ways in a job environment, and that is that there is a purpose of the organization, and then there is your own purpose, and then there is the purpose of the role that you fulfill within that organization. Now, you only hit the sweet spot, i.e., when you are not really happy and you're enjoying what you do and you are growing, when those 3 purposes are aligned. So I think that's important. So therefore, for me, it is about making sure that I choose an organization, first of all, when I graduate, or at least me, that was my thing, that is aligned to my purpose. So, I mean, the Deloitte purpose of making an impact that matters, it really spoke to me, because my purpose is also really making an impact that matters, making sure that I transform society, I develop people, I inspire people, and therefore I only changed sort of organization, or at least between the 2, at the time when I felt like the role that I had at the time didn't really make it for me. Either I've outgrown the role, or things like that. But I think that's why it's important for you to make sure that the organization that you work for, that there is an alignment between your own purpose and that organization, that the value systems are aligned. And then obviously that you're growing, because I think that the growth is an important thing. And then also, and that growing means therefore that you've got to sometimes be patient. See, sometimes people move organizations simply because they're looking for titles or more money. And therefore they lose sight of the growth aspect. So I typically stay in the role until I know that I've now grown enough in this role, and therefore I need a new challenge. I also don't stay too long in a role, because then I think you become too complacent. So therefore I think you have a time frame that you're in a role you do the best that you can, you grow, you make an impact in the role that you have, and then sometimes it's time to move on. I'm also very passionate about succession in developing people. So typically when I go into a role, I also immediately start looking for those people around me that could potentially take over from me, and I start investing in those people. And therefore, when the time comes, when those people are ready, and I also believe that I have done my part, then sometimes you need to go give over to somebody else to actually take the role, to the next steps, and then you go and do something else, and So, and that's how I actually function and how I operate.
Wow, that's quite an abundance mindset, because some people, they want to protect their roles at all costs, but if you really believe that, what, I've got it. I like what you say, that, what, you're the alignment between the organization's purpose, your own purpose, and the role that you are currently in, that all those three, should be in alignment so that you sort of hit that sweet spot, and you're actually able to move forward. And you bring some key things that you say, that, what, even though you're offered articles in other places, but still, because, the sort of culture at Deloitte stood out for you, and you really wanted to be part of that, and you were willing to be patient, you're willing to take a risk, because obviously the other people were not just waiting for you, to come on board, but you were steadfast with regards to what you actually wanted, which I think is key, because many people, they just move for money, they just move for, oh, it's the big company, but you don't know anything about that company, and sometimes you're making a decision just for a few thousand, Namibian dollars, or a few thousand rand, which will eventually going to frustrate you and hinder you, rather than actually looking. Man, I think, with you, I mean, one thing I've noticed with regards to, and what a lot of us young people can learn with regards to careers, is really investing it. Because you also say that, investing in research and education. Because you also said when you're in high school, you were also going to the Institute of Chartered Accountants in high school. I mean, not many people would say to you, I certainly never, I didn't even know what I wanted to do. And not many people, even in varsity, would invest time in going, okay, so let's say you're now in varsity and you're studying law, for example, but go to the a court, go to, to volunteer at a law firm. But many people are sort of like just waiting to finish your course. If it's the weekend, we party. If it's this, if I don't have a lecture, I'm watching series or whatever. Instead of taking that time, because I think that's the point, that many people are just waiting for something. I have to wait to graduate. I have to wait to pass my test. I have to wait to send the CV. I have to wait for them to get back to me. But it seems as if you were very proactive.
Yeah. No, I think, that's key. I think one needs to be proactive, and I think we need to keep that dream alive. Even at times when, you feel like, it is now looking that it's impossible. I think by being persistent and keeping that dream alive, I think eventually, things will happen, because I think things only happens when, you can sit, you have a choice. You can sit back and wait for something to happen. And sometimes it does happen while waiting. But I think often it requires of you to just take that step as well, the step of faith, and that means that sometimes you have to even imagine that you are what you want to be. So therefore, for me, going to the Institute of Chartered Accounting was just that feeling that when I enter there and I say, wow, one day I will be a CA, and this will be my institute, So it was just inspiring to do that,
So you then so you then went to FNB as CFO. Obviously, you also had your bosses there. People had to report to. How was that like, in the sense of, what key things did you sort of, just take away during that time, with regards to, because I think it's key for us young people to know how to relate, with our bosses, how to relate with people in authority.
So I think so maybe before I get there, so I got into FNB initially as a manager for group finance. The CFO then who actually hired me, told me in that interview, he said to me, Erwin, I'm actually looking for a successor, and I think you've got the potential to take over from me. But I want you, so I really want to hire you, but I want you to be patient. I want you to give me about 2 years at the maximum, and in that 2 years, I can turn you into a CFO. Wow. And I think that is partly why I joined the organization. It's because I think he was genuine in terms of that he was going to invest in me. And I'm telling you that from the first day I arrived there, and this was a white South African who was on the continent there, and I think he had no, if you really look at it, interest or whatsoever, or so he just really wanted to invest in me. And he did that, and after about 2 years, he actually stepped out of the position without having anything in mind or a promise for him. He stepped out and he said to me, and he made the recommendation to the CEO and to the board that I was ready to take over from him, and that happened. And that's why I'm a product of people like him. Wow. And therefore the people that are invested in me, and that were selfish in doing so. And that's why for me, I actually follow the same as well, in terms of I normally invest in other people, and when the time comes, then obviously one has to allow them to also move into these roles and give them a chance. So that's really what happened. So when I was appointed, obviously I was I think I was 33 years old when I became CFO of.
Wow,
the largest listed. 33 years old, yes. CFO of the largest sort of listed company at the time in Namibia, and obviously the largest bank. So it was quite a task, and I think that a year later, after I've taken over, my previous boss, who had then at the time was given another position within the organization, actually came back to me and said, "You know what, Erwin, you're doing so good that there were colleagues that actually at the time when I made your recommendation that you must be appointed, that actually doubted that you will be able to do it. And I didn't want to tell you at the time because I didn't want you to doubt yourself. But you have proven yourself that they are all coming back to me or to him at the time to say, look, we were wrong. I mean, this young man is really, has actually impressed us. And I guess the key was really that, as I said again, I make sure that what I do it to the best of my ability. If I don't know, I read, I research, I ask people. I'm not sort of also, the type of person who would rather not ask and pretend to know. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know. And because that is how I learn. And then I learn by asking questions. And at 33-year-old, I think at the time it was the first Black person to become a CFO of a commercial bank in the country. Wow. The pressure that goes with that. So, and eventually, I got comfortable in the role. I continue working hard. And I think, obviously, relationships are key in a role like that. So therefore, you've got to make sure that you build very strong relationships with your boss, with the people around you, and because I think, if that is not there, there's no clear or good relationship between you and your boss and the people around you. It's obviously that you would not succeed in a role like that. I think you depend on other people as well to be successful. So therefore, it's important to make sure that you build good relationship and so on. And then obviously being loyal to the organization. So you've been given an opportunity. You need to make sure that you optimize on that opportunity by working hard and being loyal to the organization, making a strong contribution. Because ultimately, obviously, you pay the salary to make a contribution, and you need to do that.
Wow, man! You talk about as well. You spoke about faith. You're now talking about concepts like godly imagination. Imagination. How big is your spiritual journey? How does that influence your career? And what sort of how do you attribute, it to you being successful, man, in terms of just your spiritual journey itself?
Yes. No, I think very much so, very much so. So I accepted the Lord as my personal savior, in high school and so on. And I think, throughout my life, my faith in God has been that key driver. Um, I, I, um, Even in times and that is really the thing, is that I believe that, God has called me, to do something great. I spent time to discover or understand and unpack and reflect on the purpose for which God has called me on earth, and make sure that I do that. So I actually regard my professional career or what I do at work as part of my ministry. So and that's really what. So I go to work not because I'm going to earn salary. You can have all sort of different purposes or understanding of your role. Some people who have a career mindset, others have got a job mindset. So job mindset is really, I just want to get a salary and that's it. So I go to work every day so that I can get a salary. Or career mindset, I'm just here to become the CEO. And that's what I'm waiting for. Or you can have a purpose mindset and say the role that I have now has a purpose. I have a purpose. Organization has a purpose, and therefore I'm aiming at hitting that sweet spot, and therefore do what I do to fulfill that purpose of which God has called me. So when I interact with colleagues, when I interact with clients, for me it's about how do I inspire, empower, and other people through what I do, and how can I become that living testimony in the way I behave, the way I interact, so that people can actually, through my behavior and through what I say and how I act, actually can be, drawn to God. One of my favorite scripture is Philippians 4:13 that says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me." Mm-hmm. So in times when things was difficult for me and I was failing CTAs, and I went to UCT to go study, CTA there, and or they call it PGGA there. It was not easy. But I will go to class, I'll go write an exam, and thereafter I'll come back and I get the result, and the result are not that good. I go back and at the desk where I was sitting, I had the scripture written down there. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So even when I got a 40%, I went back and I said, you know what, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I tell you what, by the time I went to the final exam, it has become so part of who I am that I actually really got to a point where I believe that nothing is impossible, through Christ. So my faith is a big part of my success. Definitely.
That's awesome.
I think I would not have been here if it was not for God and His grace.
Wow, that's awesome. And you mentioned that you then, so you started as a CFO at FNB when you're 33. Then you went back to Deloitte. How old were you then?
Yes. Well, I think at the time I was about, 38? Or, 38, 39? 38. Yeah, 38. Yeah.
And you went on to be the managing partner there at Deloitte?
Yes, yeah.
Wow. So what? Yeah. I know, obviously there are other partners, and I'm sure they need to agree to say that, okay, this man is going to be our managing partner. You're going to steer this ship. What do you think inspired that confidence in you from them? What do you think inspired that?
Yeah, so I think so I joined the firm, or rejoined the firm as a partner. As I said, I always wanted to become a partner, and I had to leave at the time because I felt at the time that I needed a change and I needed to have a different experience, which I think it was really a worthwhile investment. Because when I came back to the firm, I now had the industry experience, and I think at the time where the firm was, because the firm was predominantly an audit practice, and a very successful audit practice, but it needed to diversify into the advisory services, non-audit services. So, and I think at the time, obviously with my industry experience, I played a very critical role in driving that diversification. So, and I think, my partner saw, that leadership ability that I have, and I thought that I was the right person, given where we are going, to steer the ship in that direction. So, again, I was only barely a year and a few months there when I was nominated by the partnership to be the managing partner. It could have gone anywhere, but I think they saw what I did in the year that I was there. Despite the fact that I was, I think, away from the profession for 7.5 years. And I came back, and again, coming back, and see, that's the thing that I like about, for me, that's why I don't stay in roles for too long, because you get so comfortable. I actually like it when I am out of my comfort zone. So obviously going to the bank, not having, you not even done bank's audit before, was already a stretch. So therefore, I enjoyed stretching myself, because then I had to learn from almost like you're learning from scratch. And that was great. It is very uncomfortable in the first 6 months or so, yeah. And then obviously you start enjoying it again. And then at some point you become obviously too comfortable. And then for me, that is when I actually need to do something different. So when going back to the firm at the time was great, but it took a lot of effort for me now to obviously almost invest in myself again. And I think perhaps the partners, my partners saw the effort that I put in and how I quickly caught up and started getting an understanding of the industry again, and then how I led the teams, etc., etc. And I think that is why they decided, I think you'd be the right person to actually lead us into the next journey of the firm.
Wow, man, that's amazing. That's amazing. Then obviously you stayed on there, until you were then, there was an opportunity for you to go back to FNB, Namibia, where you then took up a role as the CEO there. Man, and I think, what, guys, we have spoken a lot at the end of the day. And I really think, we should take this, 2 segments, because what we're going to do, obviously, that's Erwin's story. And now we're going to talk about, obviously, things that FNB, as CEO, then also, obviously some advice. We're going to get into some advice, just for, the type of employees, employers are looking for right now in 2020, especially for 2020 and beyond. A lot of things have happened, guys. Artificial intelligence was already coming through with changes. And right now the pandemic happened, and some of those changes have been accelerated. And we really want to get his insights to say, what does it look like 2020 and beyond for employees and also for business people as well at the end of the day. So I think we can continue with that as well, because our time is fast spent. So guys, if you enjoyed this this video, guys, share this video right now, subscribe, and hit that like button. And if you've got any questions for Erwin, please write them in the comments section, and we'll be sure, to get him back another time and address those questions. So Erwin, thank you very much, so, just for what you've shared with us in terms of your journey. And I know a lot of us are inspired and are going to be inspired by this. And we will catch you in the second segment when we discuss, 2020 and beyond. Thank you, sir.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.